Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave. Today, I'm bringing you another great interview. Today's interview is going to be with Shawn Crystal, comic book artist, instructor, mentor, and the guy who created and runs and is the host of Inkpulp, the community, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the Discord, the Patreon, along with his brother, Matteo Scalera, and the Food One, Jim Mafood, and Jazzy Jamie, but you'll hear all about that shortly. Me and Shawn don't go way back, although we are from the same motherland. But I met Shawn basically through the channel, but also we had a great time at OAX this year, and we just share a lot of stuff in common. Just another kindred soul who I share a love of comics and music and movies and all things tasty. With. So you're going to hear a lot about that. We start off a kind of very light-hearted talk, two Jews having fun. And, he does go very deep into kind of the way that he creates art and some of his process, as well as reasons why he wanted to become an instructor and a mentor and a teacher and all that. This is just a great interview. I love having, serious talk along with just some light-hearted fun. It's what you can expect from all of the interviews I do here, even with people I don't have a repertoire with. Before we get started, please do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast if you're not. It's available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. You're listening to it right now on one of those platforms. Please, leave a comment. The more you do to help this podcast grow, the more you kind of help me make my dreams come true. And honestly, who wants to see my dreams get crushed besides that one person that hits the dislike? Without further ado, I present to you Shawn Crystal. Welcome back, my friends, to a special edition of Two Jews, One Podcast. And the Jews bring you the news, and I'm here.
I'm Dave.
And I'm here with. It's Direct Edition, and I'm here with Shawn Crystal. Shawn Crystal is not just a killer artist and a comic artist and a veteran of the comic scene, but he also helped set up the Savannah College of Art and Design, and he is the community leader that we all look to for Inkpulp Instruction, Inkpulp Podcast with his friend, the dumb shark, Matteo Scalera, with Jimmy Jams, Jim Mafood, Jazzy Jamie Wood, and sometimes Eric Canetti. But Shawn Crystal, how the hell are you, my friend?
Oi, Dave. I figured it's two Jews, so why not? Let's get into it. My arthritis is killing me today.
Oh my God. Did you see what Sally said the other day about Johnny?
Tonight starts the Shabbos. All right.
I was really looking forward to this because, you can have good laughs, but I know your sense of humor and mine, because we have not just, watched each other on the internet, but we had breakfast a couple times at OAX, and it's just like, oh, I have needed to get really good laughs out of my body for like the last 6 months for so many reasons. And so I was looking forward to just going really hard onto the internet. Hard, oh yeah, hard on the introduction.
Hey.
But how's everything going in your post OAX and back to work phase?
Good. I do want to thank you for those breakfasts. Those made OAX really, really nice. I enjoyed those. It was like getting away from everything, which was great. And I have to tell you. So in my crew, I'm sure you're aware of this. They call me the sensualist because of my love of every sensual experience, taste, touch, all of it. I think you deserve the crown more than I do. The coffee experience with you, like, I consider myself a coffee snob.
Yeah,
but you're a coffee sensualist. But I mean, we have different ways of enjoying the coffee, but I have never in my life smelled coffee that smelled like Fruit Loops.
Yeah. Yeah, that was some amazing coffee.
Now,
It was
now there was nothing added to that. This is you're certain of this?
No, I mean, Ethiopian coffee tends to have like the most dead on notes. So when they say it smells like this, it has taste of this, that's the soil. That's what grows out of the soil in that part of Ethiopia.
Okay, because Dave got a coffee, and it said in the description, "Notes of Fruit Loops."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, well, there's no way." When they put it down on the table, it smelled like a fresh bowl of Fruit Loops was put in front of my face, and I
Yeah.
should have tried it. I regret not trying it because I have no idea what that tastes like.
Well, I'll find a way. I'll get a bag sent to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, as you got to know from me, I'm an espresso guy. I
Hmm.
like deep, dark, bold coffees that have, some chocolate, toffee, tobacco notes, and that's probably as far as it goes. But
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
bold flavors. I didn't even know about that. So,
Yeah, it was great. And that was a coffee spot that I hadn't been to in Orlando, which, I went to a couple last year for OAX, and, whatever happens next year, I'll go back to that one and then try a new one. But yeah, the coffee thing is a byproduct of my sobriety. So I'm almost 11 years sober. And when I
congrats.
thank you. Yeah, when I started on my path to sobriety, I started drinking
That's not a
coffee.
weird thing to say, right? Congrats.
No, not at all. Not
Yeah,
at
I
all.
didn't think so. I didn't think
Not at
so.
all. And when I stopped drinking and you know, road to sobriety was paved with going to um, the first Stumptown that was in New York City. It was at
Oh,
yeah, it
shit.
was it was in the Ace Hotel, and I would walk there every day after work and get a cold brew. And,
Okay.
then
Okay.
I started to explore, like, I was a big scotch drinker, so I would try different scotches from
Yeah.
Scotland and wine and stuff. So I just kinda took that taste, like you're saying, the sensualist
Sure,
aspect
sure.
of myself and
I
moved it
get it.
onto something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, coffee is a complex, um, flavor just like wine. I
Mhm.
would put them in the same area.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And this has been Coffee Talk with Sean and Dave, the East Coast Sean Fenders and the West Coast Davengers.
Coffee talk.
Coffee Talk. Yeah, that was, Mike Myers' SNL, skit. It was
Yeah,
Coffee
well,
Talk with Linda what
and
was her
Paul
name?
Baldwin,
Yeah,
Linda, Reichman. Was it Reichman?
something like that.
Richmond? Linda Richmond. That's what it was.
Linda
Linda
Richmond, there we go.
Richmond and Paul Baldwin.
Man,
But,
congratulations to them.
yeah, those were nice breakfasts. So you chose one day and you took me to that spot, and I chose another day because you had never
Mhm.
had a Cuban breakfast experience. So
Correct.
we did that.
That was amazing too. Like, that sandwich was better than most bacon, egg, and cheeses I've had,
I crave
period.
it. Every day. Like since then, I'm waking up. I was like, man, I would kill for one of those sandwiches.
Yeah.
And the Cuban place near me doesn't have a breakfast. Otherwise, they'd have that because it's the
Mm,
bread. It's the bread
yes.
that makes it.
Yeah,
So
that's why a Cuban sandwich is so unique, and when you have one that's made correctly with the correct bread, it's, like, fucking amazing, and their
yeah,
breakfast sandwiches are the same, and
yeah.
when somebody can't make one well, it's kinda sad.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's also typical, like, most people are like, "I had a Cuban sandwich." I was like, "I don't think you did." I think they called it that. I think you
Yeah.
ate it, but I don't think it was a Cuban sandwich.
It's like bagels, and now there are places outside like, I grew up in Long Island, lived in Queens, and then worked in Manhattan, all that. And New York bagel is great. A Long Island bagel is king, but it used to be you couldn't get a decent bagel anywhere outside of the tri-state area. But
Right.
now the internet has probably been the causation of like helping people figure out how to make good bagels. And we have a good bagel store in Tacoma.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about this
Yeah.
in OAX. I mean, dude, I've got a bagel shop that my New York friends are like, come down, want those bagels 'cause I'll put them up against any New York bagel, but
Yeah.
they are from New York and opened up a bagel store down here.
Yeah, and culture and food obviously go hand in hand. And I wouldn't buy a Cuban sandwich from some white dude named Rick in Omaha, Nebraska. But if there was a Cuban family that opened up a Cuban, restaurant in Omaha, I would be more inclined to check it out.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
sorry, Rick, if you're out there, whoever you are. Um, s- so how was overall like your let's get your outlook on the two OAXs, 2024 and
It's a
2025.
good place to start.
Yeah.
So the first OAX, because it was brand new, um, it had the added oomph factor. Like,
Hmm.
it was also new. It was so incredible, so mind blowing. The talent was so amazing. This year was just as good,
Yeah.
but you take away that little factor. Like I left like, was it different? No. Do I feel as good? Almost. I think it was just the new factor. But
Sure.
I am trying to, like, I feel like the first year, the quality was of art was just, "Whoa."
Yeah, it smacked you in the face.
And this year, it still was, but I felt like there were more like, the first year, there was a few people there that I was like, "Really?" And then this year, I felt like there was maybe a few more of those. I'm being ultra nitpicky. The
That's
show was
fine.
amazing. It was incredible. It was an amazing collection of art and artists. It did not go down at all. I enjoy. I'm just being. It's Jewish
It's
talk, so
Jewishness.
I'm
Yeah.
complaining.
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's what we're here to do today. This is two
What did
Jews,
you
one
think?
podcast.
Yeah. What did you think after?
Um, for me, my experience was a bit different because last year I was anonymous. Like the only two people I knew personally going in was Wayshak because I've known him for 15 years now, and Justin Spidey Hits because we're our channel mates, and all that.
So you
Uh,
didn't know Jim last year?
no, no, I walked up to Jim and we started
Oh.
talking. Maybe I had no, because I hadn't interviewed him yet. No, we just started talking because we had a lot of stuff in common, and we talked,
Mhm,
the gyms, Jim Rugg and Jim
mhm.
Mafood, like all these. But no, I just started talking, and I kept hearing your name, and I didn't know who you were, and I'm like, who is this guy that everybody keeps talking about? Sean, 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 because you're the ringleader. Everybody was going out to dinner, and Inkpulp, and I hear people saying, oh yeah, he's the guy that runs Inkpulp, all this stuff. Um, so I filmed all that stuff. I didn't get to know Kazra until like months later, and
Oh,
yeah, and so this year it was overwhelming for me because I just like everybody knew who I was. I put the video
right.
out last year that did real well. Um, as for the show, I didn't get to experience half of it. I experienced half of
Yeah,
it intensely, and then
right.
50% of it, like I never even got to talk to Klaus, and
Oh, wow,
like
yeah.
I love that they expanded and that they got more people involved in every front. I think, and I said this on my episode, uh, the dealers there need to be a little bit more engaging. The art
Yeah.
dealers,
This gets back to a different time. I think, most of those dealers come from a time when comics and being social were mutually exclusive. I
exactly.
mean, you remember the shops I grew up going to were not like the friendliest, most
No,
talkative people. They were very unwelcoming in many ways. So I think there's something about that time period and the fans of the comics and the fans of the art that I don't know. It just seemed to attract like more people who didn't have like the gift of gab.
yeah, yeah, a little more socially awkward,
But
which is
you're
why.
right. You're right. And I think some of those dealers, in order to adapt with the changing times, should hire someone to be a face or a voice
Sure.
for the company. It would be smart.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say, and I think this is something for the future, especially with IC3 happening this year, and the marriage of comic art fans and IC3 up in New Haven, the one day show. There needs to be a visual kind of marriage of the fact that there is no presence of comics at OAX, but there's comics art. So I'd love to see some like maybe mixing of the two or history or fanzine
Hmm.
stuff, something to kind of connect because my biggest problem with the modern comic fan, collector, reader, and art fan is that comic art buyers don't seem to give a fuck about comics. They don't read them. They don't engage with
You
them.
know, you're stepping into the exact area I wanted to get into when you asked
Yeah.
about OX. So continue, and then
And
I'll ramble.
and then comic collectors that are more on the MCU, I like this, I buy the key, don't fucking give a shit about reading comics or engaging with the actual art in a way that like comics are not just covers. Um, and I lie in between. I'm a huge voracious reader, a huge voracious collector, and I am
Yeah.
so into comics history, comic art, like all of it fascinates me. And I know I'm a little unique in the fact that when I get into something, I am into it, you know? I'm into
Right.
music and I'm fascinated by the process of the making of the music, but I'm also fascinated by the
I
process of
think
the
there's
live show.
something to that with comics. With most people who are in comics, either as fans or creators, I think there's a personality trait where when we get into something, it becomes a passion. Like we deep
Mhm.
dive into it and want to dissect and know it all. I mean, I guess calling it a collector mindset kind of explains it, but
Sure.
not everything can be collected. But yeah, it's just that idea that like that mental curiosity. Like I want to invest my mind into this.
Yeah, and I wanna know the people behind it, and I wanna know the
Yeah.
process it took to create it because, like, I was saying this with Jim Ward on the podcast 2 weeks ago, is like, I never I never realized, like, the making of an album wasn't all done live in the studio. There were butterflies, in the fact or unicorns, like Rage Against the Machine recorded their solo debut as a band live in the studio. But I didn't know the process that like, oh, vocals get done and bass tracks and all this.
Hmm.
With comics, when I started to find out like the process of, okay, it's, if you're writing, you're drawing your own book, let's say a Frank Miller, you write the script, you thumbnail, you start to do the, pencils or paints, whatever, like there's a process between it. And it made me more interested in comics. And I feel like OAX kind of like shows that there is really people that just are there for investing and they don't really actually have a passion for the stories or the books
Right.
themselves.
So that's well. Let me just back up real quick. You said
Mhm.
something about when you dove into music and you thought it was all recorded in one session. You realized it wasn't.
Yeah,
This brings me to an album that I every time I get a chance to mention this album, I have to,
please
because
do.
I think it's one of the most amazing pieces of recorded music ever done, and it's the Roots album, How I Got Over.
Mm.
And from what I understand, they recorded this album in a single take. I mean, they not in the
Uh,
first take,
right,
but
but
it's all live. It's everyone's there,
mhm.
and it is a masterpiece. It's all live instrumentation, live DJing, live rapping. There's a few moments in the album because like the way it's like the album's almost broken up into thirds,
Mhm.
and like each third is just one song flowing into the other with some ethereal sounds between the tracks. But there's a couple points like between those three where you're like, maybe they did stop there. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, but it doesn't take anything away from it. But
Yeah.
anyways, I just
I I
that album is fucking amazing.
I can't say that I've ever listened to it, but I've seen The Roots live a couple of times. I might have listened to the album when I was younger, but a massively amazing band.
Yeah, and this to me, and this came out in 2010. So
Okay.
this to me is their like the top of what they
Yeah.
are, what they're capable of. Like it's a brilliant piece.
And just
Um
on that just for 1 second, there's oh, shit. Oh, yeah, okay. You aware of the band Neutral Milk Hotel? Haven't released an album in, like, 20 years. A very big indie band, like, made this album called The King of Carrot Flowers or sorry, In the Airplane Over the Sea, and there's a song called "Oh Comely," and it's like a 7-minute song that gets played, and it's mostly acoustic, and at the end, you could tell it was done in one take because at the end, you hear somebody in the studio go, "Holy shit!"
I love that, dude. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I love
great.
hearing stuff like that. But anyway, yeah. So,
Yes. Yeah. So what I noticed at OAX this year, and this is not because of the con. I think it's more because of my like me becoming more known. There's two different types of collectors I've come to find. There's the person who buys the art because of the love of the art or the book the issue it was in, the moment that
Mhm.
was captured, whatever. They have a real attachment to the piece they're buying. In my experience in selling comic art has primarily been to those people. So most everyone that buys a piece of art from me, they send me pictures of it framed and they have a story about why they wanted this. And I'm not talking about commissions, I'm talking about pages.
Yeah.
You know, why they wanted this page or why they wanted this cover and how much it meant to them. And then, and this is more recent, I'm coming to know the collector that is in it for the investment.
Yeah.
And I saw more of that this year because I started doing hand painted covers after OAX last year. So I had people coming by asking for pricing, and I price my stuff for what I feel it's worth, which is a lot. So if you buy a cover from me,
Hmm.
you're not going to be able to flip it for a little while at least. Like the value's not going to go up from where it is.
Yeah.
It's I'm pricing it what it's worth. So these guys are they're just looking for artists who are undervaluing themselves and capitalizing on it. And that that I didn't like that. Like that felt gross to me. And it's like all of us as artists, like it takes us a while. Some of us, art and business, that the mind, like having both of those together, it's not naturally born there for most people. It
Yeah.
wasn't there for me. Jim, I think, just has it. Like he
Yeah.
just gets it and has it. So I've learned from Jim over the years and from Jason, my art dealer, and have become very business minded now. But, you know, that kinda takes away some of the, like, I loved when people bought my work, and I loved the conversation and the connection we'd share over that, because I didn't just draw it to get it done and sell it. Like, I cared, and I try every page I sell, I can be like, "I tried something here."
Yeah.
And so that's something Jim and I were kinda talking about, and that, you know, I mean, I get it. Like, it's an investment. I know people buy art as investment, but as an artist, you're just like, "Ugh, I don't really enjoy that."
And I think it is actually separate than like your general art world because there is so much personality involved in comic art. Like an artist can paint something and you may never understand what's behind that painting. But if you're looking at a comic book page, you know what's behind it. There's a
Right,
story behind it, or a
right.
cover is like your Spawn cover has so much emotion in the colors and
Mhm.
just the King Spawn cover that you did. um I it Yeah, I don't like it either for many reasons. I think it's bad for comic art in general,
I
people
think so
buying
too,
stuff
yeah.
for investment
Well,
because
I mean, have we not learned from the '90s? Like,
well,
seriously, the speculator market is never a good thing.
you know, I could do a 3-hour podcast on the 90s and what I'm seeing reflected now in the last 3 years since basically COVID and things
Yeah.
started to
Yep.
go crazy. But nobody
Yep.
wants like uh, there's a reason why Comic Tim exists. The guy that appears on my channel. He he exists because he's an idiot who still thinks that the 90s are a viable commodity.
Right.
And there's so many people out there that think that. I mean, there are benefits of buying some, like understanding like, oh, this person is an up and coming artist. I want to own some art. Maybe one day it'll be worth money. For my part, I've only bought two pieces from Peach so far. And I did not love Peach's artwork at first. I had to adjust to the fact that it was a completely different style. Now I'm head over heels in love with most everything she does.
Yeah.
But
Have you seen her, like, not her, like, pre-Marvel stuff,
oh
like
yeah.
her Japanese horror stuff?
Oh yeah.
Man, that is
Stuff's
some
incredible.
mind-blowing work, yeah.
It's incredible. And so I'm buying pieces from her that I like. And the mindset for me is I see her being the future of a lot of American comic art and just art in
Sure.
general. I'm not going to live forever, and I don't plan to sell this stuff for any reason anytime soon. But I'm also like, I like it, and I see it's going to be worth probably five
Yeah,
times
and
as
that
much.
that's that I get. Like, I'm not saying you should buy a piece of art and not think about its appreciation, but own it for a while, love
Hmm.
it, have it for a reason.
Appreciate it.
And like I've had people who bought my work reach out to me via email like, "Hey man, like I fell on some hard times. I lost my car. I need to buy a car. I have to sell some art. I have to sell your piece. I hope you understand." And when they do that, I'm like, "Oh, of course. How can I help you? Like, can I shout it out on my social media?
Hmm.
Where is it for sale?" Like, it's just because they're like, "This is something I care about, and the person who made it, I care about." Like, there's care there. It's not just a
Yeah.
transaction, is
Well,
what it. Like, that's the difference.
and will stand and die on the hill of I am so happy to put my money into the pockets of artists whenever I can, however I can. I mean, obviously,
And you do.
yeah, and and so, but I have a vested interest in comics and comic art and artists in general, and like I don't see like I don't have a ton of stuff framed. I don't sit and flaunt it. I'm more of the type of person that just enjoys it by myself,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Uh, and but I'm always happy to purchase it. And yeah, I mean nobody was buying look, nobody in 1990 or 1989 was buying like the non-exciting Todd McFarlane pages because they thought one day they'd be worth 25 grand a pop, you know?
right,
They were buying them
right.
because they're like, I love this artist and I
Yeah,
can buy his art, you know?
yeah.
So
So yeah, so because of my pricing, I didn't sell big pieces. But what I did was I sold out of all of my cover preliminaries and all of my Inkpulp live drawings. They were
mhm.
smaller at a lower price point, but everyone who bought those was buying it like because they loved it and they weren't. It wasn't like just the investment aspect of it. And I mean, I had someone buy a few pages, a Deadpool page, and they were eyeing it, and it was just a splash page of oh my god, I can't remember his name. He's the Marvel bad guy, and he's like taps into computer systems. Like he's like a walking computer. Um,
Uh,
begins with an M.
Bodak.
Metro. No, no, no. Metro. I don't remember.
Metro
Anyways,
Metropolitan guy. We'll just call him that.
anyways, it was him hooked up to like all this computer wiring, and I
Mhm.
was drawing it. And it was the day Mobius died,
Oh.
so I did the entire splash page in that Mobius like hatchwork.
Oh, wow.
And in the tech, I like hid in it says R.I.P. Mobius, and Marvel never caught it, and it went to print. And so the guy was looking, he's like, "I don't know, I just love this." I go, "Do you like Mobius?" He goes, "Yeah, I love Mobius. That's why I'm digging it." And I pointed out the R.I.P. He's like, "Okay, sold."
Yeah.
I was like, "There's someone who's buying it for a cool reason."
Yeah. I mean, I don't for my part, I buy comic art for 2 reasons. One is I wanna own a piece from that artist, so I have, like, a Sienkiewicz Moon Knight page, I have a
Oh
Charles.
wow,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have a Charles Vess Marvel Fanfare Doctor Strange page because
nice,
I can't afford, to buy a Spirits of the Earth page, the book's right up there. Um, I have a couple McFarlane Spider-Man pages that don't have Spidey on them because that's what I can afford, but now I get to own that, and
yeah,
I think one of my most meaningful purchases, and in hindsight, obviously, it's more meaningful than I ever would have thought, but I bought Ed Piskor. He did a Frank Miller Dark Knight homage on Fantastic Four Grand Design issue 1, and it was a variant cover of the Thing squashed up in the cover. And I reached out to Ed and I bought it, and it was super meaningful because I love that image. It's probably my favorite image that he ever did. And
yeah,
obviously, after everything, we lost Ed, it became more meaningful. And I can't like ever think that there's a point in my life that I will ever say, I don't want this anymore. Like
right,
you
right.
might actually see me buried clutching it, and it's nice to have that connection with art. And then it's nice to be able to buy that art, like I
Yeah,
emotional in so many ways for things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I spend all day making it. I put love into it.
Hmm.
It's
And it shows. It shows. I'm actually kind of curious. I mean, I've heard you talk about George Bridgman, and I've heard you talk about
hmm
Mike Mignola
hmm
as two big inspirations. Do you remember like the first comic that you picked up that was like, oh, I want to start drawing stuff like this?
Yeah, absolutely. It was Todd McFarlane, Amazing Spider-Man, um issue with the Prowler.
So it's
I,
like 306 or 5 or something like that.
no, it wasn't it, it was before 300, I thought.
No, he started 298.
And
That
what
was
were
his
the
first.
characters in that one?
298's Chance, 299 is Chance. Last page is the splash page of Venom. 300 is Venom. 301 is Silver
Okay.
Sable.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I mean I remember it was the Prowler issue. I thought it was before 300, but okay. Um I grew up wanting to do animation.
Mm,
I always liked to draw, but the reason I wanted to do animation was because as a little kid, I saw that Spider-Man cartoon. And that was like it was like my favorite thing ever. It was like every
yeah.
week I got to see a new villain. I loved every villain, like I was like, this is my favorite thing of all time. So I want to do animation. And I never really saw a comic book, was in front of a comic book, knew Spider-Man came from a comic, but didn't really understand what that meant.
Hmm.
So I it was a friend of mine, my best friend's cousin in Hebrew school. We skipped Hebrew school, and he was an artist, so we liked each other. We always talked. He was an artist, and he wanted to do comic books, and so we skipped Hebrew school one day, and he took me to the comic shop. It was the first time I'd been to a comic shop.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, whoa, there's some cool looking stuff in here." So, this was my skateboarding years. So, like the next day we were skateboarding, we would always stop at 7-Eleven to get a drink and a snack. And actually, I think it was Highs, which where I grew up was like a 7-Eleven. It was more of
Okay.
a local in Maryland, Highs. And they had a spinner rack. So I just
Mhm.
looked and I saw this McFarlane shit. I was like, whoa, this is it. So I grabbed it, took it home, I dug into it, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. It was that absolute issue, and it was Todd McFarlane.
Great. It's a great issue. I think the cover says California Scheming on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the issue. One of the things that I think I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about, but for anybody that knows your art or watches Inkpulp or has seen your Marvel Snap cards, your covers or interiors, um, you're you're like your colors, like you have some of the most interesting color palette I've ever seen. What is there? How many drugs did you ingest for that color palette to become, like what you use? But seriously, like is there, I don't know anybody that has ever talked about an influence on colors
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's a few things going on there. One, my love of psychedelic art goes back my entire life.
Mm,
My love of graffiti art goes back my entire life, and these are two areas of art where people really celebrate hue and color.
mhm,
But I always had trouble with painting until someone, Andrew Robinson, taught me separate the values from the color. And the reason I think part of the reason I love that I work in such bright, wild colors is I'm partially colorblind.
ah,
And the areas where I have trouble seeing the difference are in muted pastels when they're the same value, like like a coral red against like a l- like a Easter green next to each other. Like, those little circles with all the dots in them and there's a number?
yeah,
I can't see it.
you can't see them because 'cause you're
No, like
colorblind.
yeah, so, like, I'll show my friends, they'll be like, "Can you see it?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can't see that?" I'm like, "I just see noise." So, I think part of the way my brain, um, creates is, like, I need big contrast in values, which before I was painting, I was really into the like high contrast black and white work.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, now I need big, loud colors so that my mind can understand how to work with all this. So I think that's a big part of it. But it's not the only part because I love color, like
Yeah.
full on color. Like Maxfield Parrish is one of my favorite
Hmm.
painters because of his use of color, and Cezanne's like oranges and turquoises and yellows. Like I love that stuff. So the Impressionists had a big like impact on me with that. And what I don't like, not that I can't appreciate it, I love like Caravaggio where it's all these neutrals, but the contrast is turned all the way up. But I don't like to use neutrals. I
Okay.
just I feel like I'm
Yeah.
just working in mud when I do it. Um, and I've done a few pieces where I'm like, I really need to use neutrals. And the first piece where I think I did it well, I just finished before OAX was the Absolute Martian Manhunter cover.
Yeah. I'm
Because
gonna
I
put that up on the screen.
Oh, cool, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. Because have they announced that by any chance?
Mm, I
I mean,
don't
I
know
don't care if you
actually.
put it up. I'm just waiting for it to be announced.
I think so, but I don't know. I've only seen
So I
it
knew the
through you.
Martian Manhunter was like all these bright colors now, and then I wanted this like really psychedelic pattern in the background, and I knew I had to paint the character, the human, where the
Mhm.
Martian Manhunter exists in his mind. And I was like, the only way this is gonna work is if that human is in neutrals. Otherwise, it's just gonna be a giant, color like fight.
Yeah.
Because if I make the human have too much attention and like I needed the brain to really just like pop.
Yeah, and it
And I was
does.
like, thank you. And the reason it does is because I went neutrals on the human. And so I'm learning. I'm learning.
Well, I mean, it's a process that never ends, right? Learning
Right, right.
and,
That's why I do it. Yeah, it's the fun of it. Yeah.
it's always fun to hear people talk about their like influences in the fine art world and stuff like that because it's a world that I don't know. I mean, I'm a simp when it comes to that. I mean, I've been to the Dali Museum and I love seeing that and
Oh, yeah,
see
amazing. Okay,
yeah.
so let me put it in comic terms.
Yeah, yeah.
I respond to the original coloring of The Killing Joke. That is one of
Okay.
the best jobs of comic coloring I've ever seen. I despise what
The
Brian
recolor.
Bolland did on the
Yeah.
recoloring. I understand it's his book, it's his vision, he gets to do his thing, and I respect that. But as an artist and as a fan, I have zero interest. You've lost me. So much of that Killing Joke book is the color. And same with The Watchmen, it's the same color artist. So, and also, like the EC Comics covers, it was like putting these like bright garish colors next to each other, like double lighting on a face, like Bernie Wrightson would do. Like
Mhm.
that's all the stuff that really spoke to me and got me excited. And in skateboard graphics, big,
Yeah.
bold, loud colors, like all that stuff. I loved that. And I like art that is loud, like not just
Me too.
color, but bold, like art that is like jumps in front of your face and goes, "Hey, look at me, motherfucker!" Like
Yeah.
that's the kind of art I like.
I mean, I had Alex Pardee on the podcast a couple weeks ago,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
yeah,
I
and
still
first
can't
time I
believe you know him.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I that's the thing. Like, it was him, Tara McPherson, and Dave Correa that kind of brought me into the world. That's how I met Wayshak and everything. Like, I used to hang out at the Cotton Candy Machine in Brooklyn and met Dave and Alex. And first time I saw Alex's art in person was at I think it was a 1984 gallery show in LA, and I was like, whoa. It was the same thing. I'm just like, I've never seen bold colors and bold art and art that
Yeah,
screamed at me but also did something into my brain that was like, "Oh, this is really weird and it's
yeah,
horror and it's funny."
yeah.
And I seeing your stuff in person at OAX, it was like the same feeling. Like, I'm watching you do it on Inkpulp and watching you draw live is really cool, but nothing beats seeing art in person.
Yeah, it's another aspect I love about doing these traditionally is I am gonna get a better scanner and I need one. The printed version
Mm,
never looks as good
yeah.
as the original. And so, like, people see the printed version, they're like, "Man, those colors are crazy." And then they like you, they come to a con, they're like, "Whoa, like, this is." So I think it makes the original piece of art a little more special.
Of course, yeah. First time I saw, like I was just saying with Alex, but I think, maybe the first time I saw some McFarlane in person, seeing his black and white art in person versus, what was on the page, especially in the
Right.
shitty fucking printed books in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
It's something else. Like the Savage Dragon Vault edition just came out last month, and seeing Larson's first three Savage Dragon issues, there's no comparison. Like the amount of ink he used to put down on the page is like, oh, let's get rid of this printed version.
Right, right. Yep.
But and then you saying about the skate art, Alex cited Santa Cruz, and I know that's like a
Oh,
huge thing
dude.
for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, it was, and there's a documentary that just came out in a few theaters, definitely one in LA, on the artist, from those Santa Cruz
Mm,
graphics.
yeah,
And I'm just waiting for it to come to streaming, 'cause I sent it to Jim the minute I saw it, we were like, "Whoa!"
I bet that's
But, like,
killer.
he talked about the screaming hand, how it like, I saw a preview, how he made it and, like, what was going on. I was like, "Wow, man, I can't wait to see that."
That thing is a cultural icon.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
Oh, absolutely.
it
But,
transcends everything else.
I mean, his skate graphics were just my favorite, hands
Hmm.
down.
Hmm. Um, so where, with you set up the college, the SCAD, Savannah College of Art and
I
Design.
set up the Atlanta campus sequential art department with my buddy Pat. That's what I
Okay.
did.
And that was kind of like, is that the beginning of you taking, I like to call you, you're a community leader. You have a big leadership role, and it seems it goes pretty far back. Was that kind of the beginning of you feeling like, okay, if I can instill some of these great skills and, morals and art morals in people, like it'd be a great thing? Does it start there? Does it go a little bit further back
No, it
than that?
goes a little bit further back to, I first started teaching at the Art Institute of Atlanta, and when I was in grad school, I got my first job for DC. When I was in grad school in Savannah at SCAD studying comics, and I had learned, like, the road to getting published was so difficult
Mhm.
and challenging, and I still stand by the fact it should be. Like, I see a lot of people be like, "It shouldn't be so hard. It's not fair." It's like, this isn't for the easy. Like,
No, it's not.
this is a privileged thing to do. You got to earn it. So, but I remember, like, this is, the internet was still young, and there wasn't a much to learn on there. It was still a big guessing game, and if
Mhm.
my journey was, 10 years, I could have shaved off 5 if I had just known some of this stuff. So what got me started was, like, I want to help people who want to do this avoid some big pitfalls.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. And we started the department, I was just a faculty member. And it was early on where Pat got promoted up to dean, and then the department was just on me. So then
Mhm.
I became the chair of the department. That was my first time in sort of a leadership role. And so I took that very seriously, and I built things. Like, I started a club there called the Temple of Cartoon Mojo, which was just a fun name. But it
Yeah.
was every Friday. It was just an open studio session every Friday. We branded it with a logo and an image, and we started a blog, and it just became like a place for students to, like, be passionate about this. And it wasn't like, I mean, people were working on projects there, but that wasn't the point of it. You could work on whatever the hell you wanted to work on. So I think, like, doing that, I was learning how to be in a position like that and help guide. And I can't say I always did it great. I can't, it was a learning experience.
Sure.
And with Inkpulp, the reason I started using my platform as an educational tool was like freelance, like a couple years before COVID, freelance just dried up. Like
Yeah.
Marvel and DC just would not even respond to an email. I was like, it's like I never existed. So I hit bottom. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, I've got these skills. How am I gonna make myself survive with this? And
Hmm.
one of the things was like, well, I am a good teacher because of the way I work and think. Like, I don't just do something to get it done. I really like dive deep into why am I doing this? Why is this line here? Why is this one thicker than that one? And why am I doing a long shot as opposed to a close up? Like all these ideas, like I'm always trying to like really question everything I do, and I try to make everything I do have intent. So because of that wiring in my head, I'm like, well, I can pass that knowledge on. It's not the only way, but
Sure.
it's one way. And if you can, I just found as a student, the best thing was to like get in front of artists, hear their way, go to another artist, hear their way, and kind of Frankenstein the bits that make sense to you to make your way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can teach and I can make, I don't want to go back to a school and work. Like I'm done with like that, like working for someone. Like I don't want to work for
Here,
anyone.
here.
Yeah, you get it. So I was like, I just had an idea. Like, let me just make videos and sell them. And in doing that, it wasn't terribly successful, but there were people that loved it, and I'd get questions. And all of a sudden it's like people, and even people who didn't buy the videos, all of my posts on social media were
Hmm.
becoming more academically driven because that could sell the idea of like, hey, I'm an educator. Why would you buy any of these videos? Well, here's why. All these little free glimpses into what I do might make you want to buy a bigger piece.
There you go.
So then it becomes like a lot of questions, people, a lot of DMs, I'm answering everything, and it wasn't intentional to be in somewhat of a leadership role, but it just kind of becomes that. You become a professor. But I think any professor that's worth their salt is still a student in their mind.
Always learning. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of happened. And I mean, so all the things I built, the ink pulp instruction, the podcast, like everything was leading towards this moment in time that's about to happen, like 2 months from now, where these vehicles and avenues I put together are going to start functioning. And I just kind of, I was, it was funny. I hate telling this story, but it's true. Um, I was like trying to learn marketing because I was like, I'm
Hmm.
terrible at this, and like I know my art is good enough to like be working and to sell art, but I'm still having trouble like people even knowing who I am. I wasn't using social media well. I like nothing I did seemed to like help me get over that hump.
Yeah.
And so it's like I need to learn marketing. So I was listening to a book on marketing, and it said create a cause. And if you create a cause, people get involved in the cause and people get involved in the idea, and they're not getting involved in you, which was a key point to this chapter.
Hmm.
Because this is the problem you're seeing with like cancel culture. When people get involved with you, one misstep and
Can
your
cause.
whole idea just crumbles.
Yeah.
So I was like, and also I'm not like, I don't want to be that person who's like the cult of celebrity, who's the center of the party. I'm more the person. Let me get everyone together for the party, and they can all have fun, like the meals I plan. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, so the cause is then that I'm just the perpetuator of it,
Yeah.
and I was, and I. This is at a time when AI was just starting to pop up, and I mean, this is the truth. And I saw Kari Andrews say it finally. And I see every artist, the minute you say working digitally is easier, you get jumped on by people who work digitally.
Right.
But then my question to them is, well, why are you doing it? Well, it's faster. Why is it faster? Well, it
Makes it easier.
offers me shortcut. Right. And so I understand it's a tool. It is just a tool.
Sure.
In the hands of a great artist, it's just a tool. But in the hands of a novice, it's not just a tool. It makes the mediocre look professional.
It's a crutch.
Right, it's a crutch. So, I very early on, the first thing that came like Photoshop and digital coloring came in.
Hmm.
That seemed to make sense for color process. You can really prep your art for print like never before, and comics can be colored like never before. And I think that elevated the medium, having digital coloring. But after that, SketchUp came,
Mm.
and SketchUp was a 3D program where it was very simple. 3D program where you could build environments, or they had stock environments. Like, I need a car. I'll just go to SketchUp and I will grab the car, I will paste it into my
Mm.
page and trace it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, like my internal meter was like going off the charts. The comic book professional community embraced it. And I was like, this feels wrong to me.
Hmm.
But anyone who I got, so I just became like, in my crew of friends, known as the crotchety guy who just wants to draw shit traditionally.
Get off my comic book.
Right. So, but I was like, it just doesn't feel right to me. It's like, remember, my MO is to learn as I'm
Yeah.
going. So if I have to draw a motorcycle, which I'm not good at, well, guess what? It's my opportunity to
You're
learn how to draw
learning.
motorcycles. When
Yeah.
I grab that 3D model, I rob myself the opportunity of learning. So I just see it as cheap. And it also, the more and more this is happening, the more I'm like, we as artists shouldn't just let these publishers' schedules make us sacrifice what we do so much. And so it really became a core value of mine. I'll use the computer. I need to learn how to do it. I need to have the knowledge of it in order to speak on it critically,
Of
A,
course.
and B, there are some jobs where it's going to be required of me. So I wanted to learn it, and I did learn it. And so then like we fast forward. Then another thing that really got me was scanners got a lot better, and people could get their own scanners, and they would just scan their pencils and
Mm.
adjust the levels and make the gray black, and they're like, now they're inked. And people were getting ink page rates for doing that. And I was like, A, that's not inking, B, gross. Like, just gross. Like,
Oh,
this mentality of like, how, like, I still put the onus on the publishers. They put artists in such a desperate
yes.
position of trying to survive by paying them so poorly that any shortcut they can get to help them get it gives them a raise,
And
basically.
it perpetuates a system of, okay, if these guys are going to take shortcuts and we can still pay them garbage, they'll keep pumping out as fast as they can.
Right, right, which now is out of hand. And the fact that rates from when I started have gone down
Oh yeah.
is mind blowing. Anyway, so as I'm listening to this marketing book, I'm like, well, people know my love of traditional inking and brush inking, and the more and more people were like going digital with their inking, um, the artists who were stuck to traditional inking became fewer, 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 but they
Hmm.
also pushed the medium of inking forward in a short period of time more than it had ever been pushed for before. I mean, you look at like what Mateo was doing, and what Sean Murphy came in was doing, what
Hmm.
Jim's doing, what Ashley Wood was doing. Like, all these people were pushing inking in all these wild
Yeah.
directions. And it was like, creatively, like, this is what happens when you get rid of the fat, the people who are just trying to get a check, and you're left with the artists. So um I was just thinking of things, and I was listening to the chapter about marketing and having a saying, and it just hit me. And this is a terrible analogy, and I'll explain why. But I thought of, "Make America Great Again," which I hated. I mean, but it worked.
Yeah,
But the
unfortunately.
problem I had with it is it was completely disingenuous.
Yeah, and it was
It
dishonest and
it was completely, it wasn't a core value of Trump ever.
no, he has no values.
Right, well, okay, well, yeah, I agree. We could go off on hours about that, but so what I said is, like, I don't wanna do that, that's gross.
Mhm.
But what if I believed in the cause wholeheartedly? What if it was a
Mhm.
core value for me? And AI was getting more and more popular. I saw craft suffering. I mean, I had been watching it happen since SketchUp. The craft of comic book, the medium, I don't wanna
Mhm.
just say the art, the medium had been going down, down, down. We had some great people come in and do these amazing things moving forward, but you know, you have a Craig Thompson, you have a Mazzucchelli doing Asterios Polyp, but in the superhero realm in particular, like, what have you done since Killing Joke or Dark Knight or Watchmen to push this forward? You
Yeah, I
know,
can
and
think of 1 or 2 things, but that's like 1 or
yeah,
2
that's
things in
about it.
25 years.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the craft had suffered, and it's amazing because we had a talk, me and Eric and and Mateo with Klaus about this,
Mhm.
because we asked Klaus, like, when you were like younger and getting in, when it was you and Bill Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller and Dennis Cowan and Howard Chaykin and Walter Simonson, like, what was happening? Like, you guys were changing the medium of comic books daily.
Yeah.
And we were like, "How and why?" And Klaus was like, 2 things. 1, we were allowed to, and 2, we were just having fun.
And they were I assume they were making, money too to support their, like, living,
Yeah, I mean, they were making a living. It wasn't extravagant. They were
No,
making,
but
but
it's
that's also the problem, is people coming into comics expecting to make an extravagant living.
no, you have
And
to know that you wanna make a living, and
right.
and, extravagance is a different thing, but, I think, if I can interject with that, it's those guys paved the way for the Image crew, and,
Yeah,
the '90s, but they were fed up, and they're like, "Why are you guys getting so rich?"
right.
And they were the ones who shifted for better and worse, they shifted everything, and we're still feeling the effects of that today,
Yeah.
the image revolution, because, like, I side with those guys. I side 100% with
Oh,
them. They, you know,
100%.
because, like, McFarlane was doing 2 books at once, and he was
Yeah,
doing the highest profile book at that
yeah.
time, and Liefeld's trying to keep up, and, he's putting out a book that sells 5,000,000, and Jim Lee's putting out a book that sells millions,
Mhm.
and it's like, you guys, and that was Marvel's detriment. Like, if they had paid them, they
Yeah,
may not have
yeah.
left, and comics may not have gone down the shitter in the late '90s.
Right, right, right. Yeah, there was just one fatal flaw in what they did.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
they left story behind,
yeah,
and that's where they
yeah,
failed.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
business-wise, I love what they did, and I loved
Mhm,
what they did for creators. Um, so getting back, so I was like, "Okay, craft is suffering, Imma keep it alive. I'm gonna get everyone who, because the people who seemed to be interested in what I was doing, we're really interested in the traditions.
mhm,
We're really interested in the hand done stuff. What brush is that? What ink do you use? Like,
mhm.
these old questions were still coming up. So I was like, okay. And so I was just like, I'm at the end of one of my reels, I just wrote "Keep Craft Alive." And this is at the time, um J Jay Gonzo, my designer, was putting together my new logo and branding package.
Mhm,
And, I had said to him, I was like, I'm gonna come up with some sort of, slogan or a cause, like something to get behind what I'm building." And, I posted it, and he called me the minute he saw it. I was like, that's it right there. Keep craft alive." I was like, "That's what I was thinking." Like, I didn't even tell him I was gonna do it. He just saw it, called me. I was like, "That's exactly what I was thinking." So I knew I nailed it. And, to fast forward now to when, I'm sitting down at a con, I just hear someone walk by, "Keep craft alive." I'm like, "This is great. This is great." And it's not, and the mistake people make is it's not an anti-digital thing.
No.
It's a let's not lose the traditions thing. Like I said at the beginning, was the computer in the hands of a seasoned professional is just a tool.
Mhm.
But in the hands of someone just learning to do this, it's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're not gonna learn. You're just not gonna learn.
And with that, I'd like to bring out Robert Kraft of the Kraft family fortune, Kraft cheese, and we're going to keep Kraft alive. Uh, I
Yeah.
going back to that though. The other thing that people that do exclusively digital, I understand. Like, I don't know. I'm not an artist, but I've got friends that do both, and they do both very well. And the ones that do digital and traditional, when they do digital, they're able to do, like I see a lot of artists that do digital. It's the same style, and everything kind of looks
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same. And I have friends that are able to do two, three, four different styles digitally.
Right,
And
right.
then they're, traditional looks differently. But the thing that I don't understand, if you're a digital artist, you have to have some formal art training, I would hope, if you're a good digital artist. If you're a comic artist that is truly digital, you're missing out on the only thing that might actually get you a living, original art sales, you know?
Yeah, well, that's a whole yeah, that's another thing, and the counter argument to that is I'm faster, so I can get my work done quicker, and therefore I'm getting paid more, and then my
Mm,
argument to that is, like, you're just serving the publisher while you're hurting yourself,
yeah.
because you're not building up your original art market for yourself, and you're just helping them do their thing, and what are you getting out of this? Like,
Yeah.
nothing. But, you're right, though, that, like, there are artists that are crushing it digitally, like Jason Shawn Alexander is an amazing traditional artist,
Mhm.
and when he works digitally, I don't know how the fuck he's getting that look, because it looks he's one of the few people where I'm like, "Yeah, that does not look digital. I
Yeah.
don't know how
Yeah.
you're doing that, bro." But, in the same vein, it's like, then you go and do a whole issue of Batman like that, you're like, "Oh, man, you just lost a lot of money." And
Yeah.
not to just make it about the money, but I don't know, when you make something digital because it's quicker, you're saying to what the way I'm reading that is this is disposable.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
just made
Just
to
a
get
file.
done and move on to the next thing, and I never want to be creating something that's disposable. I have just because, I haven't worked on very few of the books I've worked on have been great books.
Yeah.
Um, I'll put that on the script mostly, but yeah. Um, but yeah, so it's, I get it. And what I don't want is I feel like any sort of movement or cause or community that is built against something it's got its own death built into it. It's like, if you're just a rebellion against something, how deep is it? When nothing like that's so Keep Craft Alive is not a rebellion against digital art. It's a celebration of tradition, and it's about keeping that alive,
Yeah.
documenting it, teaching it, practicing it. So I think it's important that, like, to be reactionary, I think is really bad.
Yeah.
Bad for art, bad for business. I know every art movement is a reaction against the previous movement. So in a way that's benefited the Keep Craft Alive stuff, because we had a wave of, like, digital shortcut artists all come in, and they complained about it being too hard. They complained about it being not being fair. And it's like, well, you made it so easy to get in. What do but the generation that came up behind them was like, nah, like Marty, I want to
Mighty,
get
yeah.
back to my paper, my pens, my brushes, my ink. I want to know that shit. And
Well,
so
it's
I think there's a whole generation coming up like that.
and I hear the echoes a lot of that in the music industry too, because of the way it's gone, especially with, you want to talk about an industry that exploits people for their art.
Oh my
Music, I
god,
mean,
yeah.
music is the worst. And I think you're going to see a lot of bands, a lot of people picking up instruments again, because art
Absolutely.
and something I talked about recently with Scheme Richards on the podcast is, all art comes from struggle. There is no good art that was made from somebody that didn't struggle. Like, it's find me anything, go through a Bob Dylan song, go through a movie made by, by Marty Scorsese at the beginning of his
Yeah,
career,
yeah,
go through anything and it comes from struggle. And right now, we have nothing in this country but struggle. And I think, we need to see artists start putting
right.
things
And
down and
and
rebelling.
art, like the thing about art is it's a purely human experience,
Hmm.
creating it and seeing it. And the more we turn it over to machines, the less we make it a human experience. And I'm not just
Yep.
talking about drawing and painting. I'm talking about anything where someone dedicates their life to a practice
Hmm.
that allows them to do things that most people look in awe of, like, how were you I thought that that was a physical limitation on the human brain or the human body, and I put Olympic athletes in this category
Yeah.
because it's not something you didn't just press a button to be able to do that. You spent 30 years so that you could run that mile point 1 second faster than it's ever been run before. 30 years of every day practice, practice,
Hmm.
practice. It's just like me pulling like a long straight brush line with no ruler, just my arm, brush, ink, and paper. That took me 20 plus years to get to be able to do that. And while it looks effortless now, it was all that practice, all that time, and learning how to adapt to differences in humidity, differences in paper, difference in brush, like all these variables.
Or just,
That's
sorry.
uniquely human. It's just uniquely human, and we're turning that over to the machines too
I mean,
easily.
just the just kind of like your dedication to it, which is time, energy, uh away, time away from family and friends. It's that I love seeing, like, that comes through. I mean, some guy who I'm still fascinated by, because me and Jim talked about it. Sienkiewicz is a wizard. He's not
Yeah.
human, or he
Oh,
is
no,
human,
not at all.
but he's a wizard. But, like, you can't, like, you could prompt a fucking AI thing to give me a Bill Sienkiewicz painting of
Right,
Electra, and then you look at a Bill Sienkiewicz painting of Electra, and you're like, "Oh yeah, these are two different things." But the
right.
gap is closing. It's getting
It
harder
is
to tell.
closing, but the thing I always tell people this when they get so worked up about AI art is like, AI art can only produce things based on what's been done.
What exists? Yeah,
When I sit down to draw, I don't have that limitation.
yeah.
Jim Mafu does not have that limitation.
No, no.
He didn't come from, you know, I mean, he obviously was influenced and learned from other artists, but he didn't come in looking what he does now doesn't look like anything we've seen before.
No, no, and
And
what?
so AI can't do what Jim did.
No, and it can't produce the colors that you produce, and it can't create that Martian Manhunter cover with a guy popping out of a brain, because it didn't think of that. It
Right,
didn't.
right.
It didn't
It
have
had to be
because it
thought
didn't
of
exist yet.
before,
Yeah,
right? So it's like it's so non-creative,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like the opposite of creativity. But
Um,
and the thing is, AI as a tool, I don't necessarily have an issue with. The real issue I think is in the users.
yes.
Like, going to their message boards or their Facebook pages like Midjourney, and hearing, like, just reading what they're saying, they believe they're artists. They believe they're legit. Then some of them are making a very, very good living selling prints of this shit. Like, my hairdresser, when I sat down like a couple months ago, she's like, "Shawn, I have to know how you feel about this because I think it's gross." I
Mhm.
was like, "What?" She goes, "I have this client who's making all this money selling these prints." I was like, "Oh, is he an artist?" She goes, "No. He just gets this app and he puts these words in and it makes these prints. And he's bragging about how much money he's making." I was like, "Yeah,
Mm,
it's gross." So the hubris of that, the lack of humility, the lack of respect for what art is, I have issue with. And like all things, like, people are like they're stealing from artists, and that's true. But if they figure out a way that artists can get paid on it, I'm okay with it. It's sampling in hip
yeah,
hop,
yeah,
pay the people you're sampling from, and it's fine.
yeah,
But those again are humans making something new from what existed before, which
exactly.
is different. But it's like, I understand the, like, they're stealing from us thing. Great, figure out how to pay us. That problem's out of the way. Now
And
let's talk about the assholes who use it and have the arrogance to call themselves an artist.
I wanna talk about a certain aspect of Inkpulp. And for people that don't know what Inkpulp is, is a podcast that Shawn had started years ago. It is now turned into a community on YouTube, Discord, and Patreon. And I'll put all those links down below.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course. I am part of the Patreon, part of the Discord,
Thank you.
although
Thank you.
Discord's too much. I can't talk to that
Uh,
many people at once. It's too much.
yeah, it's a lot. The more I get to use it, I'm like, this is really cool. What's cool about Discord for me is I open it and I see the entire community talking to each other.
Yes.
I thought it would be up to me, Mateo, Jim, and Jamie to
Mm-mm.
really be present, but I'm like, oh, you guys just wanted a space to share ideas and art. Like, great,
Yeah.
yours, do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
used
that's
to have
been
a
amazing.
Discord for Davengers, but it went dormant for like a couple months. And I was like, there's too much of me out there. I'm just nuking the Discord. Maybe one day it'll come back. But the thing I love about Ink Pulp, it is a community and it feels like a nice place to relax. And one of the things that I wanted to say about you being a leader in your leadership role, you have something that, well, we are lacking in leadership these days. You have a lot of empathy. You are in tune with your empathetic side, and that is a huge piece of what we lack from the hollowness in all of our
Yeah, yeah,
government and corporate structures and all that. But
yeah,
the thing that really struck me that was great about you guys is your chemistry. Like the chemistry you have with Mateo and Eric and Jim and Jamie. It's and I see a lot of me in you and vice whatever the phrase is, because I think our Jewishness really does blend well with humor. I mean,
yeah.
I often, Chappelle was one of those people that kind of made things make sense to me once upon a time, where he said that, like, black people and Jewish people have so much in common because our lineage comes from struggle, oppression,
Right.
slavery, all of it, dates back to Egypt.
Yeah,
And then it created the greatest comedians,
yeah.
Seinfeld, Richard Pryor, Dave
The Borscht
Chappelle.
Belt. Yeah, the whole
Yeah,
Borscht Belt.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I see you guys doing the thing that I kind of do, like with the skits and all that, I'm like, did you guys, like, with you and Mateo, and then you and Jim and you and Eric, like separately together? Did you guys ever like have a conversation about like we should take this in a funny way, or is it just friends
Mm-mm.
being friends and not
That's
worrying
all it is.
about offending people?
That's all it is. It's
Yeah,
100% that, and that's why I think it works. It's genuine. It
yeah,
started because Eric and I through I had Ink Pulp Audio, like you said, which was the interview only, audio only podcast that I would
hmm,
only do in person, never do online. And before COVID, like my career was going well, all my friends' careers were going well, and it was getting harder and harder to line up interviews at cons because people had meetings, people had dinners,
hmm,
people had commissions. So I like the podcast was just stumbling. Like I was trying to figure out what am I going to do with this because I liked it. It was good. I just didn't know what direction to push it in since I can't interview in person at cons anymore.
yeah,
Um, so then COVID hit, and Eric was like, "Shawn, let's just hop on and record." Like we were just starting to stream. We got these cameras. In fact, the camera I'm using, Eric sent me. Like this was a gift from
huh,
Eric to get us going. So he was like, let's just hop on and start recording. And so we did like, like a month's worth of just Eric and I recording podcasts over COVID. Like there was no schedule. It
right.
was just like, we were like, what are you doing today? He's like, I got some time at 3. You want to get on the camera and chat? Like, yeah, let's do it. Um, and so then one day he was like, and Eric always said about the podcast, like, I just like let's use this as a chance to like catch up with each other. Like these are
Hmm.
just my friends. I want to talk to them. So we had a Mateo on one day because the timing worked out, and then we were like Mateo should always be on. And Eric was like, "Yeah, it's just like this is our chance. We don't see each other. Like let's just hop on camera." And it all was born from there. And then Jim and I like that's just who we are. Like
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
difference between us being on camera and us being, at a restaurant for dinner. Like there's just zero difference between it. And so and Mateo and Eric, it's the same thing.
I I admire it, because I do everything kind of myself. Hence, creating a schizophrenic character that exists in the same world as me, because like I can only rip off myself. Um, because most people, I mean, this is not me trying to blow up my ego. Most people can't keep up with me. Like,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
just
I get
things are always firing off and I'm liable to say anything at any moment.
that.
Um, but what I love about it and what I encourage everybody to check out about it is like, okay, we're talking comics. We're talking about comic artists talking about comics. Comics should stay fun, and and this is friends being friends. We should all, I always am happy and I'm proud and I'm delighted to know that I have friendships that have lasted 30 years and people that I know since I was a kid and since high school and even before. And I can talk to those people whichever way I want, and there's never an offensive part. And being able to be that free and also like really, really prop up the medium that you guys love. It's
Yeah.
just a great community to be a part of. And for anybody that's um, ever nervous about being like, hey guys, I have, this to promote. You and Jim and Jamie and everybody's just happy to
Yeah.
promote a
Yeah.
project. You guys talked
Everything.
about my
Yeah.
Kirby zine a bunch.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Dude, we love what, like, the community isn't like Jim, me, and Mateo. It's everyone. And I love
Yeah.
seeing what everyone's doing. But it's everything got so serious,
Hmm.
so heavy and serious. And it's like there was so much anger and fear. That's all we see. And I was wrapped up in it. I mean,
Yeah.
my original version of the podcast, I was going through depression. Like, it was a dark place, and that podcast is not shy away from showing that.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, that's when I was starting to, like, work my way out of the depression. I was like, well, when you, like, vibrate at a lower frequency, you attract a lower frequency. So
Hmm.
as I was trying to be more positive and like uplift myself up out of it, I was still getting this trying to like grab at me. I was like, I gotta let go of that. And then when I got to like a fun place, it was like all the fun attracted it. I mean, the Fratelli brothers is much older than the podcast ever was. It's because people would be around Mateo and I at a con or at a dinner, and we were these two dumb goofballs
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
having fun. And so what you're seeing on the podcast has existed for a long time. And I got to say, the characters thing with Jim,
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to happen. Like, we were recording promos and Jim would be like, I got an idea. And then he would just get into a character and it would kill me. I would die laughing. Like the takes of me laughing, I'm genuinely laughing.
Hmm.
And then like after a few of them, Jim's like, hey man, thanks for like indulging like all my weirdness. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Jim, this is the best thing ever. Like, I'll record a promo and go home and just get into bed with my wife and be like, I am so lucky. Like, I get to, like, have so much fun with my best friends,
Yeah.
and while it's not making a living, it's getting us there
And
to where we're
it's
making a living with it.
and
But
it's
it's
giving
helping
you
all aspects
happiness.
of our businesses. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad
Yeah.
that comes through. I mean, and sometimes it get, like we'll get a comment like like our humor is crass and like I
Yeah.
have to turn it off. I'm like, okay, well
All
then the
right.
show's not for you.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm not trying to be for everyone. And that's a new idea I don't get. This idea that like I want to be everyone's favorite, because
Mm.
I didn't come from pop music. I didn't come from popular films. I didn't come from popular books. I was always the counterculture kid.
Yeah.
I grew
Punk.
up on the Beat Generation, punk rock, early hip hop, independent film, and I never saw myself or wanted to be the pop sensation,
Hmm.
because in order to please everyone, you've got to really turn your voice way, way down
Oh yeah.
so that everyone can get on board. If I say something that someone like what I said about digital art, people are like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." Okay,
Yeah.
fine. You're not a fan of mine. That's okay.
Yeah.
But this is who I am. So if you're a fan of mine, then you'll enjoy what I have to say. But I'm not trying to make everyone a fan of mine.
I totally identify and relate to that. You know, I come from loving the cult movies and yeah, like I like
Yeah.
mainstream stuff. You know, my favorite band's Pearl Jam, and you know, I don't ever shy
Yeah,
away
but
about
I
talking about
think
that.
that's the one time where popular music was good
Well,
music,
yes, because
was art.
it was
Because
count. I mean, the
that was
90s.
it was all kind of like, to see a band like Nirvana have a smash hit off an album like Nevermind, which was this fuzzy, punky, metally, like,
Loud
yeah, yeah, just ballsy. I mean, to be on Rolling Stone with a T-shirt that says "Corporate
magazines
magazines
suck.
suck,"
Yeah.
it's like, that's punk rock. And
And to follow that up with, you know, when yeah, incest aside, but to follow it up with In Utero, which was even weirder, and have
yeah.
that be, you know, their best album
I mean,
and,
yeah,
you
have
know
their first single "Scream Rape Me," like, it was not made to make everyone happy and
no,
like it, like,
no.
so that was a weird time. We were very lucky. I my kids and I talk to my kids about this all the time because they love that era of music. I'm like,
Mhm.
"You guys don't understand. This was at a time where, like, the good music was the popular music."
Yeah.
Like hip hop, like the hip hop being made in that era, like Tribe wasn't a pop rap band.
No, they were indie
They were
rap.
indie as hell.
Yeah, they were jazz
So,
infused indie rap.
yeah, and that's also when the independent film scene became mainstream.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
had Quentin Tarantino coming out of that. I mean, Kevin Smith's, first
clerk.
movies coming out of that. Like, it was a weird time where real art was the mainstream, and I think I don't know if, maybe that happened in the '60s, but
Yeah,
that's
I mean, it's definitely that's where counterculture starts really, you know, with
yeah,
the Woodstock hippie movement, the you know,
right.
obviously free love, drugs, counterculture in comics, you know, Crumb starts to
Yeah.
become
Oh, man.
popular and then like Easy Rider and all those kind of movies get made. Um,
Right.
you know, I always tell people that, you know, living in New York, Z100 was the top radio station, and it was always an interesting time to grow up where you'd hear Enter Sandman and then you'd hear Tribe Called Quest Scenario, and it's
Right,
like,
like, how is Metallica be how did that happen? Like, it's
yeah,
so fucking that was a weird time. It was a
yeah,
magic time. We were
yeah,
very, very lucky to have lived through that, and I
very
think
fortunate, yeah.
because of that, it really helped me ground myself in sticking to being true to myself as an
Mhm,
artist.
mhm,
Um,
yeah,
but
and
even
surrounding yourself with that.
early hip hop was really about that. Like, the '90s hip hop was like, keeping it real was a thing. Like,
Yeah,
now
and
people just say, "Oh, I'm just keeping it real." It's like, "No, no, 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 that's not what it meant." What it meant was, don't be a corporate rapper. What it meant was, make this music because of the love, not the
mhm,
money. Like,
or the
it
struggle.
made right, and this was a craft. The craft of lyricism, the craft of beats, like, yeah, it was
Yeah,
a different time. It
it
was a great
was.
time.
And there are still people trying to keep it alive. I mean, or and there's still people making statements. I mean, Kendrick's halftime performance was a statement.
Yeah,
It was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was also rest in peace Drake. You know, he's now 12 feet underground. Um,
The thing is with the Kendrick Drake thing, I don't understand this.
I don't
It's so
understand it where
weird
it
to me
came from.
because I mean, honestly, I'm a fan of both. But I don't listen to Drake because he's an incredible rapper. I listen because he's catchy and poppy and easy to listen to, and it's love songs. Like, how is it that we have like a battle rapper? It's like taking like, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like having a beef between like Metallica and Taylor Swift. Like, I don't
Oh yeah.
understand it. Like, Kendrick, like, I why? Like, let it
I,
go, man. Like, you're one of the greatest MCs that's ever lived. Why are you focusing in on him? Why not go after, like, have a battle with KRS-One? Let's elevate the craft. And that's what battling was about. It was
yeah.
never about, like, taking someone down. It was about pushing up the craft. Like, oh, I hear you're the best. You're the best. Well, let's use the best. Get them together. They'll fight it out. Then one person's going to up the other person. Well, then they're going to come back. And then it was like, it was always pushing up. And now
Well,
it's just like,
it was, but then obviously Biggie and Tupac took it a little too far. Well,
oh,
actually,
yeah.
Suge Knight took it too far, but we'll
But
not
that
get into
wasn't
that.
even a rap beef.
No,
That
that
was
was
like
just
a
a beef.
personal. It was so
Yeah,
weird, man.
yeah,
That East Coast, West Coast thing was so bizarre.
yeah. But it's. I think the biggest thing that Kendrick did though was honestly was overshadow the fact that that piece of shit Trump was at the game
Well,
because
right.
nobody ever, you
I
know.
loved all his anti-political stuff, like the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
Sam Jackson thing.
Oh, that
I
was
didn't
great.
know about, and then I learned about. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah, that was a
props.
piece of art. That whole
Yeah,
thing was a piece of art.
yeah,
Like we think about like a guy like David Lynch, putting a lot of different messages and putting things in the subtext, and that's
right,
what that performance was just
right.
layered with subtext. Um, but getting back to corporations and stuff, I'd like to just give a shout out to our sponsor, Folgers, because the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Like you drink Folgers.
Yeah, oh yeah, this was actually when we were originally supposed to record, I asked Jim, like, what's something I could ask Shawn or talk
Oh
about
no,
that would like kind of just make him break? And he's like, oh, he loves talking about instant coffee
dude,
and
don't get
how
me
much he
started. It's
loves
not
drinking
coffee.
it.
It's not coffee.
No, it's not fucking
It's not
coffee.
coffee. Dude, my brother-in-law, shout out to Rich, who I love dearly. He's a coffee snob,
Mhm.
but he's a more a caffeine addict than a coffee snob. So he keeps instant coffee on him at all times. And I'm like, What?" Like, I saw him pull it out. I
That's
was
an
like, "What are you
addiction.
doing?" Because I would travel. Like, I went to Denver. He's like, "Oh, you gotta go to this coffee house." I went there. It was
Mhm,
fantastic. And
mhm.
then I see him pull out, like, I forget what Starbucks instant coffee packets are called,
Oh,
but
they're
he had
called
a
shit.
yeah, yeah. He pulled one out, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 bro, what are you doing? Not in my house. Not in my house." I was like, "I'll make you an espresso. Not in my house." He's like, "Yeah, sometimes you just need it." I'm like, "No, I never just need it."
No, me neither. Me neither.
So I'm not a crackhead like he is. Like,
No.
caffeine is not the reason I love coffee.
No, I love coffee for the taste, the smell, the tradition, and like, I do a pour over every
The
morning and
ritual.
yeah, the ritual,
Yeah,
but
it's a big again, keep craft alive. There's
yes,
craft in making coffee.
exactly. And much like you, I will structure a travel day around hitting that one coffee shop that I know I'm going to want to go to. And like, oh, okay, so
Yeah,
all right, I'm going to be
absolutely.
in that area too. Okay, we'll get coffee at two.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And
yeah,
dude, every con, it's like Jim and I were like, "Okay, where are we getting coffee tomorrow?"
yeah. You know,
And
my
then it's like, "Well, where are we gonna get lunch? Because I'm gonna need an espresso after lunch." And like, I can't just have a cup of coffee in a restaurant. Like, no, no, no. If they
no,
don't if it's an Italian restaurant with an espresso machine, we're gold.
yeah.
Like, I'm gold.
I can have my second coffee of the day because I'll have 2. That could be at a
Same
restaurant,
here.
like a breakfast restaurant that I go to because I know, like, the coffee's it's at least better than
Oh, yeah,
average.
if it's good
Yeah,
coffee, yeah, sure. If it's
yeah.
good coffee, it's fine. It's
But
fine.
my 2 of my trips have been very much like, my last trip to Scotland, which was 2 summers ago. Um, I went to I structured my driving around towns that had, like, decent coffee spots because I wanted to try them because much like a comic store or a record store, a
Mhm.
coffee shop is really that pyramid of individually owned businesses that have their own
Yes.
identity, and they're typically places you can have good conversations if that is part of, their baristas kind of like
Yes.
daily thing.
And
Um
this is all craft. Like, this is
Mhm.
like everything I was saying about not trying to be pop culture. It's trying not trying to be a corporate entity. Like,
Mhm.
I prefer a mom and pop place. I
Yeah.
don't want a corporate chain. Like, everything you like, the mom and pop place cares, loves, has passion in producing what they're serving you. And that's where I wanna be with everything.
Yeah, with
Like, with
comics and
art, with
art.
music, with, like, everything, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, I know you're not ready to announce it yet, but you have something creator owned coming down the pipeline,
Oh,
right?
no, I do wanna announce it, I do wanna announce it.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so
So let's
yeah,
hear
this
it.
is perfect because on March 1st, I'm gonna need people signing up. So,
Mhm.
I don't know when is this coming out after, before?
This will actually come out next, not next Monday, the 20. Yeah, it'll be actually out right after you announce it, like 2 days after you announce it or so.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm gonna have a Kickstarter for my new art book. Um, but unlike other art books, this is not a, "Hey, here's my art." This is a book about my craft. So you will see the thumbnail, the pencils, the inks, the paints, everything. You will have, I wrote this book. Like I didn't just put images in it. You'll have, the initial approach to the piece,
Mhm.
then what I was doing with the thumbnail, then the pencils, then the inks and the paints. What did I change along the way? Why did I change it? It's not a ton of reading, but
Yeah.
it's a look inside my mind. But the first portion of the book I write about traditional media.
Mhm.
I have pictures and I write about every tool I use, why I use it. I have an intro from the great Klaus Janson, which blew
Yeah.
my mind. Um, so it's really a look into the craft of me and my art. And I think that's going to make it a very unique experience in terms of a read and to have. So that's called Inkpulp Cyan, an inside look in the art of Shawn Crystal. But I'm giving away my new sketchbook for free.
All right.
So if you sign up for right on March 1st, the landing page for my Kickstarter goes live.
Mhm.
The campaign goes live April 1st. So
Okay.
if you sign up on the landing page to be notified for the launch on April 1st and you pledge at any level, you will get a free PDF of my new sketchbook, which is Inkpulp Magenta, which is just a collection of all of my drawings, my sketches, my thumbnails, my studies. It's the book, and I wrote an intro to this because the sketchbook is really about my shape language. So it's an exploration of my shape language.
Hmm. What does
So,
that mean, shape language?
so this is a tricky thing to explain to someone who's not an artist. Think about, you know the art of Jason Pearson pretty well?
Yeah,
Okay. Think about, and you know the art of Mike Mignola pretty well.
of course.
So think about how the two of them would draw a hand.
Mm.
It's a different shape language. Think about
Yeah.
how the two of them would draw a big muscled figure.
Yeah, and shoulders specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really the way you use shapes to create your world. And I feel like style, while people always talk about surface, I feel like style originates in shape,
Yeah.
in the tiny little drawings that are this big. It's like Mateo's shape language isn't mine. We have some overlap.
Mhm.
Jim's shape language is Jim's.
Yeah, it's on a planet its own.
Yeah. So yeah, start looking at art and looking at sort of that shape language. So this is the intro is a little bit about what is shape language and what is my shape language. So I did a whole like write up on that, and then my thumbnails and my sketches, which people always love to look at, it's just my shapes.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, people do talk, I mean, I know it's talked about a lot on Inkpulp, but I see other people mention your thumbnails and the way you do that, and it's interesting. And I, in tandem with this podcast, I'll put out that reel that, we shot at OAX, you talking about,
Awesome.
your cover studies, because,
Yeah.
like,
So that basically that what we did on video there is
yeah,
what my art book is.
cool.
It's just a collection of a bunch of pieces of me doing that.
Great. And there's a lot of people that I mean, I'll be buying it because I'm interested. I can only draw when I'm high, and it looks like serial killer art, and I'll send you a picture of it. But I was told, and look, this might be one of the greatest compliments I ever received. Dave, my buddy Dave Correa, we were at his studio, and he had kind of just a night where friends come and draw, and I had a couple of artists, in his friend group that were like, "Man, this is true outsider art." Like,
Yeah.
I have no influences. I just can't, like, I've never had the ability to really draw or understand it. So I just ran with it. and it looks like
But that's
stuff,
great. That
yeah,
because you created something out of pure passion for it.
yeah, yeah.
And there's a great museum in Baltimore called the Outsider Art Museum,
Hmm,
and it's a collection of art from people who were never considered themselves artists throughout the history.
interesting.
So it's a lot of folk art and a
Yeah.
lot it's a really fascinating museum.
Yeah, and I will say this, that the times, and I don't have to be like super high or anything like that, but the times that I've set out to be like, okay, I'm just going to eat a little bit of edible and, grab a comic backing board and some markers and stuff and just draw. It's always made me feel better to
Yeah,
draw. Same as
yeah,
writing, same as recording, like
yeah,
getting it out makes me
yeah.
feel better.
Oh, hell yeah.
So,
Which is great, and that's, like, people who are like, "I can't draw a stick figure." It's like, I know people that just will sit down with a pen and paper and just make patterns.
mhm.
And
Yeah, I used
that
to do that.
that's amazing, like, there's no that's what's fascinating about art is there's no reason to do it. It
Yeah,
serves no practical purpose.
no,
It's
but
cathartic, it's relaxing, it's mentally stimulating, it makes you feel good, but, beyond that, it's a strictly human thing.
yeah, and it's been around since the dawn of humans existing, maybe even before that, aliens and animals. But and I think this is a great way to close it out because I I have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that what we do as podcasters, hosts, and conversationalists is art, but it really is like the art of the
Oh,
conversation. People
dude.
can't just sit down and talk for 93 minutes
Yeah, and it feels
like
like
we
it
just
5
did.
minutes just yeah, it feels like 5 minutes just passed.
Yeah.
And especially because with, like, digital media now, people are losing conversation,
Mhm.
the ability to talk to people like like my daughter's age group, like, they see a phone call as, like, aggressive. It's like, "Wow." Like, why don't you just
Yeah.
call them? Like, "That's so aggressive." Like, "What?"
It's the most
If
human
you
thing to
if you
talk
want
to
an answer,
somebody.
stop just texting and waiting and asking someone else if they saw them, like, just call them.
Yeah. Yeah, but I appreciate everything you do for what inspires me and for everybody that's inspired. And like I said, all the links for the Patreon, the Discord, the channel, and your Kickstarter will be in the description because I know how to promote people.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
but Sean, this has been an absolute fucking pleasure, and it is not the last time. I guess it's
No,
okay to announce it
yeah,
that
yeah.
there will be a special Inkpulp live during DavengerCon on April 6th, Sunday. I think we're shooting for 11 a.m. Pacific, but I more information of that will come out.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So, anything
Well,
you want
thanks
to
for
say?
having me, dude.
Yeah.
No, I think yeah, I just wanna thank you for having me on, and
Mhm.
thank you for all you're doing because I feel like there's a movement happening, and we are all part of this, like, bringing comics back to independent-minded, self-publishing, creator vision stuff, and
Yeah.
I love what I'm seeing.
Well, I'm glad that I get to be a part of this and get to have just so much fun with people in this space. So, um, thank you once again, Sean, for coming on this, and it's not the last time.
Thank you. Yeah, no, definitely not. I'll be back.
Oi, Gavolt, wasn't that great? Uh, I'm all verklempt. I have a great time talking to Sean, whether it's in person or like we did here on the podcast. That's not the last time you're going to see Sean because during the weekend of DavengerCon over on the West Coast Davengers YouTube channel, which is on April 5th and April 6th, a full 2-day streamed Comic Con. Sean is going to return with his partner in crime, Jim Mafood, and we are going to do a live Inkpulp podcast right on the YouTube channel for West Coast Avengers. So please click over there to subscribe if you haven't. Once again, leave a review, do whatever you can to help me move this podcast up the chain to the stratosphere. Just, get a couple more subscribers. Anyway, thank you for listening to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave.